Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick. This is your other host.
Christina Fasonic. How are you, Damien?
I'm good. I'm good. We're doing something a little wild tonight. We're actually in London, England, right? We hope right now. So we're pre-recording this episode.
Right. I was going to say because it says at the bottom of the screen there that we're in Wheeling, West Virginia, so we don't want a lot of folks.
We don't.
No. So I noticed we look a little grainy tonight, but that's how it is. It's all lo-fi. So we have a wonderful writer tonight,
We have a legend in the Pittsburgh literary scene
and beyond. Vox Populi is a big deal. So
yeah.
You want to introduce him?
I do. I say a legend. Michael Sims is the founder of Vox Populi, an online forum for poetry, politics, and nature, and he's also the founder of Autumn House Press, a wonderful press that
yes
we love here at the Writers Association of Northern App. It is a nonprofit publisher of books. He's the author of 3 full-length collections of poetry, including American Ash, Nightjar, and a college textbook about poetry. He's the lead editor of over 100 published books. His novel Bicycle of the Gods, a divine comedy, will be released in August by Madville.
Oh, wow. That's amazing stuff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Christina and Amy. I appreciate being here.
We so very much love Autumn House and, all the support it has given writers from the region. And thank you for doing that. Really important work.
Oh, I love it. I don't make any money at it, so I do it because I love it.
Well, and in the end, I wonder sometimes about the profit models. Obviously, they're important, but I think nonprofit publishing, more and more people that we know are going that direction or doing some kind of cooperative publishing. And I think that there's a real future in that, and in the opportunities they offer writers who might not otherwise get published.
I agree. I think that for poetry in particular, but also for literary fiction and progressive thought, we have to pitch in and do what we can to keep those books out there, because there's not a huge market at it. People don't make money publishing it. We have to publish it because we believe in it, and I'm very proud of the work that I and a lot of people helping me did for Autumn House and now with Vox Populi.
Yeah, it's awesome. Awesome. So what will you be reading for us tonight?
I thought I'd start with 2 poems about Pittsburgh. And if there's time, I can, of course, read another poem, but I'd just start with those 2. Sort of dark and light, the dark side of Pittsburgh and then the light side of Pittsburgh, because my home city has lots of light and also lots of shadow. Should I read the first poem?
Yeah, well, we're going to disappear and let you do some reading.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. As I said, I live in Pittsburgh, and there's a street in Pittsburgh called Carson Street, and it runs through the south side, and it has not a good reputation. A lot of bars, a lot of pawn shops, tattoo parlors, and a good amount of drug addiction on that street. My son was living in that neighborhood a few years back, and he had an apartment there, and he also was working in that neighborhood as a carpenter. This poem is called Hammer. On West Carson Street, skinny white boys slump in front of tattoo parlors, scratching their arms. Girls in short skirts take long pulls on cigs, stand in groups, smiling at the men who drive by, hungry and shy. The realm of the hungry ghosts, the Buddha calls it. I don't know anything about anything, but I once saw a guy hit another guy over the head with a chair, and a cop with thick wrists put handcuffs on the brawler and haul him off. And I saw the bartender stomp the broken chair and throw the sticks in a dumpster in the alley where a junkie was shooting heaven in his tattoos. My son wasn't any of these guys. He was the carpenter in the bedroom of an empty house down the street, nailing a 1x4 to a 2x4, reinforcing a stud in a wall that's seen better days. His long fingers hold the nails, and he swings the hammer from his shoulder for more force. My son was born blue. His shoulders were so wide, he got caught on the slide into the light, or maybe his long, dark hair got caught in the instrument listening to his heart. Or maybe he just didn't want to start this long, difficult walk to oblivion. But whatever the reason, I know he was stuck in the birth canal, and when he came into the light, the midwife massaged his chest until he gasped. And now, when I look at his beautiful hands, which can drive a 4-inch nail into a board with 2 whacks, I think of his tiny hands 27 years ago, opening and closing as he took his first breath. I don't know anything about Jesus, but I'm happy my son doesn't live on the street anymore. Walking down Carson Street, I saw a beaten down boy begging for spare change, but it wasn't my son. I saw a young man hand a small bag through a darkened car window, and the slim hand of a woman pass cash to him, but he wasn't my son. I don't know anything about hell, but I've seen a junkie sitting on the sidewalk, his knees pulled to his chin, staring at nothing, just the feet of people walking by, trying hard not to look at him. That's a dark poem. One of the great accomplishments of my life was teaching my daughter and later some other kids in the neighborhood how to swim at Reams Pool just down the street from our house in the Mount Washington neighborhood of Pittsburgh. And that summer, when I taught Leah how to swim, I learned a great deal about myself, probably more than she learned about swimming. The summer you learn to swim. The summer you learned to swim was the summer I learned to be at peace with myself. In May, you were afraid to put your face in the water. But by August, I was standing in the pool once more when you dove in, then retreated to the wall saying, "You forgot to say sugar." So I said, "Come on, sugar, you can do it." And you pushed off and swam to me and held on, laughing. Your hair stuck to your cheeks. You hiccuped with joy and swam off again. And I dove in too, trying new things. I tried not giving advice. I tried waking early to pray. I tried not rising in anger. Watching you, I grew stronger. Your courage washed away my fear. All day I worked hard thinking of you. In the evening I walked the long hill home. You were at the top, waving your small arms, pittering down the slope to me, and I lifted you high, so high to the moon. That summer, all the world was soul and water, light glancing off peaks. You learned the turtle, the cannonball, the froggy, and the flutter. And I learned to stand and wait for you to swim to me. So those are my 2 poems, and one's light, one's dark, and they describe a good part of my life here in Pittsburgh. So would you like to talk now, or do you want to hear another poem? What do you think?
You're more than welcome to read another poem if you have one.
Oh, I've got thousands. So.
Well, we'll disappear again.
Okay, we're on a Pittsburgh roll here, so I'm going to read a poem called Black Brick, Yellow Brick, black and yellow being the colors of Pittsburgh. You may remember that the great South American poet Vallejo, Cesar Vallejo, has a poem that begins, "I will die in Paris on a rainy day." I love that line, and the poem is truly great. I took that line and changed it to adapt it to Pittsburgh and wrote my own poem from there. Black brick, yellow brick. I will die in Pittsburgh on a beautiful day. A day I imagine much like today. I will die in Pittsburgh. Don't turn away. It will be a Monday like today in spring. Yes, it will be Monday because this poem arrives on a Monday with its rhymes all awry, and never so much as today have I felt so alive. Michael Sims is dead. They beat him because he was guilty, and also, as you know, he was innocent. They held him in quarantine and beat him hard with questionnaires and with taxes. The witnesses are the beautiful Mondays, the radiant Tuesdays, the Wednesdays that belonged to someone else in another town. So that's my black and gold poem.
Well, I have a lot of things to say, but I'd like to start with I think you'll probably live forever if you're going to die on a sunny day in Pittsburgh. Given that there was yet another report that said that Pittsburgh is the fourth grayest place in the United States, that has the fourth, it's the most gray. So you're good at 600, 700 years old. We're talking here.
Particularly if it has to be a Monday.
And if it has to be a Monday, I mean, you're getting there.
Yeah.
If this is predictive, so
Good, that's very clever. Thank you.
all jokes aside, though, I love, love, love these poems, especially the parenting part of it, because I feel like we get to the point where we identify more as parents than we do as young people, as the children. And I think that first poem was really a lot about that you get to this age where when you see people struggling, you think that could be my son, that could be my daughter. And you're so grateful that that's not the case. And I feel like you captured that essence of parenting really in both of these poems. So it was really, really fine work.
Thank you. Yes, parenting is the most important thing I've done in my life. I consider it much more important than my writing or my editing or teaching. Um, I, I've, I think I've made a good contribution in those fields, but it's my children that I'm most proud of. Nicholas is a carpenter. He has a successful business. It seems right now everybody in this region wants a new kitchen or a new bathroom or a new deck. So he's doing very well. He takes care of his family. And my daughter is in Washington, D.C. now. She's 28 years old. She was 4 when the poem, when the events of the poem took place. So it was some time ago. But she just got a graduate degree, and she wants to work on the big issues in Africa and the third world where she's lived. And she wants to work on malaria and starvation and domestic abuse and the other epidemics that afflict all the world, really. So I'm very proud of my 2 children, and so I'm glad that they tolerate my writing about them.
Well, parenting is a tricky thing because you don't know. You work really hard at it, but you don't really know what takes, so to speak, until later, right? You put all that effort into it, and you think, it's going to be the sunburn at Disneyland instead of like all of the fantastic rides that gets remembered and things like that, right?
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, I grew up in a very strange family, a lot of violence and drug addiction, alcoholism, and so my dream was to have a happy family, and so I've tried to do that. I have a wonderful wife, and she's been just great mother to our children, and I've learned a lot from her since my models were so bad. But it's been a weird and beautiful trip. I stopped writing for the most part for about 30 years.
Wow.
When I was in my 20s, I wrote a great deal and had some books published. And then when I was about 31, I changed my life. And I became other things than a writer, a father, a husband, a businessman, a teacher, a political activist. And I did do some writing during those years, but not much. Um, and then when I retired from Autumn House 7 years ago, and I retired from the teaching job that I had, I looked around and I tried different things like gardening and thought, I might do that. Did political activism and some other things. But writing started calling to me. And so I sat down and I started writing. And all of the work, or at least this is the way it feels, all the writing that I should have been doing or could have been doing during those 30 years came pouring out. And especially during the 2 years of COVID, I just wrote an enormous amount. Right now, I have 5 novels under contract.
Oh my
I have
goodness.
I have 2 completed new books of poems beyond the ones that have already been published. And I have ideas for others. I have a partially finished collection of essays. But I'd sit down and write every day for 3 or 4 hours, and the words just pour out. And it seems clear to me that this is the work that my soul, so to speak, needed to do during those 3 decades, and it's all pouring out now. So people say, "How can you possibly write that much? And can I get published like that too?" But they, they don't realize that this is not just 4 years of work; it's 34 years worth of work, and it just happens to be all coming together right now. So I could not have written the poems that I've written recently. I could not have written them 30 years ago. I just did not have the kind of life experience or the skills necessary to do that. But editing has taught me a great deal. For one thing, I've had a chance to get to know and actually work on the text with some of the great poets and writers of our time, like W.S. Merwin and Mary Oliver and so many others. And working with them and looking so closely at their poems and their stories, their essays, has taught me a great deal, and I'm able to use that now in my writing.
That's awesome.
Excellent. Yeah, I love what you selected, the sort of dichotomy between the darkness of the first poem I was reading. I saw, oddly enough, before we got on, I was rereading Dennis Johnson's Jesus' Son.
I love that book.
The similar imagery. Yeah.
Yeah. Dennis Johnson was one of my early influences. I was always one step behind him. He was at Iowa. He graduated from Iowa the same time I came in, and that was when I first became aware of his work. And since then, I'd followed his work. And of course, his novels, several of them have been turned into films, which are great underground films. Jesus' Son, for example, captures that novel pretty well, I think. Yeah, he tragically died too soon, but he left behind a large body of great work. I love his poetry particularly.
Well, I really appreciated the Pittsburgh imagery. I think anybody who's been there or spent some time in the South Side know that, like, there's this energy there, and it's, I don't know, it's changed. Place to spend time, and also a place to find people that I wouldn't necessarily.
So thank you, Michael, so much for making time to read for us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it. You're both such wonderful people, and this is a great show. It's a great contribution to our art. So keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for being on. Really wonderful work.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll see everybody next week, and hopefully we'll be back.
Yes, from England.